and it looks like a pterodactyl. Now, another thing that's very, very strange is that when one of these creatures first comes through the time portal, its energy is still kind of flip-flopping between space and time. It hasn't fully landed into space-time yet. And because it still flip-flops through time and space, it hasn't fully materialized, which means that some of it is going to appear more like a wave than like a solid object. As soon as it turns into a wave, it becomes light. So until it fully consolidates into our space-time, it has a glowing effect. It's an uneven effect, and for whatever reason with these creatures, it typically glows reddish-orange. So you will see for like up to 5 minutes at a time, the creature's body will have this reddish-orange glow that's fluctuating all over the surface of the body. Now, what do you think a reddish-orange glow could be interpreted by primitive people as being? What do you think they might think that was?
Geez, space people, God, all sorts of things.
Well, if you see something flying through the air and it has this flickering reddish-orange glow on it, what do you think that glow might be? What would you say is happening to the creature if you're a primitive person?
I have no idea.
It's on fire, right?
Okay, it's on fire.
Because it's a reddish-orange glow. You're seeing the thing glowing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what if these same creatures used to be able to get through a vortex over England very easily before the Earth shifted to make that less favorable for them?
Okay.
You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
What do you think they might have called it in the ancient medieval legend in England?
Fire-breathing dragon?
A fire-breathing dragon. Exactly.
Wow.
Because if you look at the pictures of the dragons, which remember now, Viking ships had the heads of the dragons carved right into the ships. The legends go back, and in fact, if you go to dictionaries that are only a few hundred years old, they say that dragons are a legend in which people were seeing them. And in fact, all of this stuff, you know, these creatures used to be able to get through over England, and they would attack human beings and kill human beings, and they were dangerous, and people needed to fight them. And so you had knights that actually went up against these manifested pterodactyls with nothing more than a sword. And the fire-breathing legend came from the fact that once they pop through the vortex for about the first 5 minutes, they have this flickering reddish-orange glow over them, which made them think that it breathed fire. So now what you're seeing is how this is like the Newton's apple, right? We know the legends. We've now written them off as fantasy. The grid has shifted, so you don't get pterodactyls manifesting over England very much anymore, but there have been a number of pterodactyl sightings in the U.S. There have been pterodactyl sightings in Texas. There was a very prominent sighting where a guy was piloting a private plane over the Hudson River in upstate New York, and he actually had a pterodactyl fly right over his plane and almost attack him. And again, you have the Thunderbird legend with the Native Americans. And now the grid has shifted in such a way that most of these guys are getting through in this one node over Australia, over Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea also has a brontosaurus-like creature that's been coming through, that's been seen. And in fact, the Aborigines have a creature that they're seeing that's coming through in mainland Australia too. So the reason why I'm bringing all this up is a very important point, and that is that I've been attacked by certain skeptical people over the idea that anything would actually happen in 2012. They say, well, you know, everything around us is very stable and it hasn't changed and it's exactly the way it is, and there's no reason to think that anything unusual is going to happen in 2012. But I disagree. And the reason why I disagree is that we have plenty of evidence that these major rifts in time can happen. We have had multiple planes disappear, not just in the Bermuda Triangle, but there's another one south of Japan that the government has declared an official disaster area. They call it the Devil's Triangle. And they literally will not allow you to sail a boat through or to fly your plane through. Any air traffic controller will reroute you around the area. It's written in on the maps, don't go there. And that it's a disaster area, that if you go through there, you know, you could have a disaster. So, and that's just one of the 12 points. Now, here's another interesting thing. Another one of the 12 points is, well, two of them is the poles, the North Pole and the South Pole. Now, the South Pole has given birth to a legend of the so-called Hollow Earth, which all started when a military airline pilot named Admiral William Byrd, I believe is his first name, was flying over the South Pole in an airplane and saw green land. He didn't see ice. He saw what appeared to be green land with mountains and trees and grass. And he saw woolly mammoth creatures and various other creatures living in what appeared to be this open prairie. And this shouldn't have been there. So that in turn has led people to conclude that he must have been looking inside the Earth and that this area was inside the Earth's surface. But we now have accurate satellite pictures of Antarctica. We know there's no hole. What people don't realize is that he happened to be seeing that vortex while it was open temporarily so that he could look through and see down there into another place. Now, there's another very interesting Bermuda Triangle case. You can Google this one, too. The woman's name is Carolyn, Carolyn Casico, Casico. Carolyn Casico was supposedly going to be landing on a particular island where her friends were waiting for her. The island had a little airstrip. Her friends see her plane coming in, and they were in radio contact with her as she was getting in. Then what happened was they were able to continue to hear her radio transmissions coming in, but she wasn't able to hear them talking back to her. So now she's getting radio silence from them. She doesn't know what's going on, but she continues talking. And she becomes all freaked out because she flies over the island that she was supposed to be going to. And they hear her describing this as she's talking. They can't talk back to her, but they're hearing what she's saying. And she says, well, I really don't understand this because the map says I'm in the right spot. The island, the shape of the island is completely correct. But I don't see any buildings. I don't see any houses. I don't see any sign of civilization. And there's no landing strip. So something's got to be wrong. I don't know what the heck is going on. As she's broadcasting this, they're actually watching her plane turning circles over the island in the air. They can see her plane. So for some strange reason, she was able to see through a time portal, but they didn't. They saw her in our time, but from her perspective, she was looking through a vortex which caused a lensing effect in which she was seeing the island as it was millions of years ago. And so if she had flown down, she would have gone into the vortex, she would have entered into that parallel time, and they would have seen her plane vanish in the sky. That's what would have happened. But strangely, for whatever reason, she could see it and they couldn't, and that's one of the mysteries that we haven't quite figured out why that happened. But we do know that she eventually got discouraged and said, well, this can't be the island, and turned around and left. And then apparently she did end up flying into this vanishing point because her plane then disappeared, and they were never able to find her. So this again goes back to the 2012 concept and the idea that there are very much real vortex effects happening on the Earth all the time. Enormous gaps of linear time can be traversed very quickly depending on where the cycles are. And this makes it all the more likely that the most radical prophecies that have been given in some very reputable sources about what's going to happen when we go through this shift could be true. That includes the Bible. You know, there's quotes in the Bible that say the mortal must put on immortality, and that which is corrupt must put on incorruption. Two are walking in the field, and then there shall be one. This kind of stuff. So the Bible actually spells out interplanetary climate change. It says there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, men's hearts failing for fear of that which is to come, the sea waves roaring. So they describe all the earth changes. They describe the social upheavals we're experiencing now, and they say that it leads to what we think of as a physical body becoming immortal, and basically that we go into this sort of exalted state. So this has been a platform that I've taken for a long time, and the book that I'm going to be putting out is going to be the definitive scientific collection of data, which is much more than I could ever do in one public lecture.
Sure. Let me just interrupt you for a second here.
Yeah, sure.
All of these people that are just flying by with questions for you and stuff like that, and
okay.
I want to say, first off, that this show is recorded, and you shared so much information. I would suggest that people listen to it several times.
Well, we'll get it transcribed, too. We have a whole transcription team. We'll get that up on the website, yeah.
And any links that you could provide would be great for some of this research somebody's asking. And also, something that I didn't know about, and it's really doesn't have much to do with what we've been talking about today, but have you heard about some kind of a explosion on the moon that NASA has got planned for its next launch?
Yes. I was talking with Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot last night on the phone about some other things that we're working on, and she mentioned this to me. It isn't something that I've researched yet. Apparently, Carrie has been speaking to some people about it, but it doesn't appear that there's anything untoward going on. I think that anytime NASA does anything different, people want to read into it that there could be a conspiracy behind it. I haven't read the articles yet, so I don't really know what it is, but my guess is that it's probably intended for seismic readings. That's typically why you put off a charge like that, is that you, in doing so, you then jostle the surface and of wherever you blow up, and then that allows you to measure how the impulses go through the ground underneath. And like, for example, if you do this over the Giza Plateau, they've found that there's all these hidden chambers and passageways under the plateau, and that may in fact be where all the stones for the pyramids were being pulled from, was these underground passageways that they hollowed out. And they take the stone from underneath and bring it up to the top, and then you build the pyramids. So my guess is that there is probably some sort of covert thing going on with why this is being done. I would imagine if I called Richard Hoagland, he would have a whole lot to say about it, but we haven't spoken since this news came out. So that's about as much as I can say on it right now without having read anything.
You'd mentioned the structures on the moon earlier, and I'm just wondering if they wanted to get rid of those or something.
Okay, now I'm remembering something.
Okay.
Now I am remembering something. And this is a new witness that Carrie has been in contact with. And apparently the secret reason for what's going on here is that the Chinese are about to send up a probe to the moon, and what they want to do is they want to photograph the Apollo landing site. And what they're planning on doing is showing that what we say is there is not there. And so what we want to do is basically go back there and blow up what is there so that they can't find what we don't want them to find.
Okay.
That's what this one guy was speculating is why they're doing that. That they're basically going to, destroy the evidence, because this witness is saying that that at least some of the moon stuff that we have seen was actually involving a jump gate technology in which the missions were actually not being flown as we expected, or if they were being flown, then other material and other things were actually being gated over to the moon rather than flown. And so there could be some stuff up there that we really don't want anybody to see. And so there could be any number of things that they want to blow up on the moon that they, that would involve technology they don't want to get into the hands of the Chinese now that they're going up there themselves. Right,
okay.
And sometimes I just have to remember things, and then that is what we talked about. It just was slipping my mind when you first mentioned it. There's so much information to know. People don't understand this, but if you start talking to somebody who's relatively high up in the cover-up,